Hi, I'm Dr. Joe Nemeth. I'm a periodontist in Southfield, Michigan, and I found it a little disturbing to recently discover two articles published only this month about possible side effects of fluoride, particularly the fluoride in our water. This was a study done at Mount Sinai and published in Environmental International, and it talks about fluoride diminishing kidney and liver function in adolescents, and this is of concern. Now, we don't know which adolescents may be affected, if they already have somewhat compromised liver or kidney function, but nevertheless, this is something that is interesting and the first time I've read or heard about it. The second study, which may be even more pertinent, is, and this was published in August, Journal of the American Medical Association Pediatrics, and it's talking about pregnant women who drank more fluoridated water had children with 3 or 4 points lower by age 3 or 4 on their IQ. So lower IQ on children of women who drank more fluoridated water. Now, the American Dental Association says one study is not enough. Well, one study is not enough, and they need to do more. But certainly it raises concerns. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control has called fluoridation of water one of the top 10 most important advancements in public health in the 20th century. On the other hand, this is interesting, and I never knew this, but about 4 years ago, in 2015, the recommendation was lowered for the amount of fluoride in the water. It had been 0.7 to 1.2 parts per million. Now they don't want it more than 0.7 parts per million. So they're already starting to lower the amount of fluoride in the water. They may have whatever reasons they have, supposedly staining or fluorosis of the teeth, but who knows? You know, it's interesting, despite wide fluoridation, which has lowered the caries rate or the decay rate of individuals here in the United States significantly, it hasn't lowered it any more than in European countries that don't have fluoridated water but get their fluoride from dental products or local supplements, which to me is much more safe, or I think is much safer than ingesting the fluoride, which goes throughout your body and may affect your entire body. The authors of this wrote that it may be indicated to reduce fluoride in pregnant women. So, you know, there's this shadow that's being cast over fluoridated water. We don't know how important it is or how real it is, but these two studies, to me, are very, very, very significant. I hope there are more studies, but it's going to take a long time for the American Dental Association or the CDC to change their mind about this, because to some extent it's a matter of saving face. They've invested a lot of time and energy into promoting fluoride, and for them to suddenly say, well, maybe we should not do it, I think it would take a lot of effort to reach that point. But I think local communities may start eliminating fluoride from their waters. It wouldn't surprise me, and that could happen, you know, maybe this might be an impetus for that. I'm not saying fluoride is bad, but it's questionable. And should we really be taking in fluoride for our teeth when it goes throughout our whole body and affects our whole body? Anyway, some interesting news. It concerns me. I haven't read these studies before. This is recent. So just for your consideration, but most importantly, keep yourself healthy, keep your mouth healthy. You will definitely have a healthier body, and we would love to hear from you. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Questions, comments are welcome, and have a wonderful day.
Restore your smile and your health. Visit drnemeth.com to schedule your appointment today.
Scrub, scrub, scrub. Ready?
Abby Udi Smith is extra careful about brushing her son Teddy's teeth now that her local tap water no longer contains fluoride. After community members in Union County, North Carolina, came forward to express concerns, the county commission voted 3-2 to remove it.
I didn't even know that there was a fight against fluoride.
Eddie, are you ready to come back?
She's now scrambling to figure out what to do next for her 2 small children.
We're going to have to talk about possibly supplementing.
Dentist Meg Lockery is alarmed. She says fluoride, a naturally occurring mineral, should be added to public water to help develop strong teeth, especially for small children and those without access to a dentist. Toothpaste with fluoride, she says, is not enough because the fluoride needs to be ingested.
We know that fluoride works. All the journal articles have shown that there's a 25% reduction in children and adult decay for people that are in community fluoridated water.
Despite being the norm for decades in local debates, the nationwide fight over fluoride in water is reaching new heights in the wake of COVID and the anti-vax movement, pitting dentists like Lockery
I hope you consider leaving the fluoride in the water for the most vulnerable of our population.
against activists.
How long can our society bear the cost of knowingly lowering our population's IQ?
In Union County, the debate erupted when officials prepared to open a new water treatment plant. The local chair of the right-wing political group Moms for Liberty pointed to a controversial 2019 Canadian study that showed slightly lower IQ scores in children whose mothers had higher levels of fluoride exposure during pregnancy, though the study's author acknowledges more research is needed.
Fluoride is actually the one substance that we add to our water that's not meant to address the quality of the water.
County Commissioner Brian Helms voted to remove fluoride.
By putting a substance that's meant for, a medicinal type benefit into our water, it brings up a significant question about consent.
Major health organizations, including the CDC, the American Dental Association, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, support fluoride in drinking water. But it's been rejected by dozens of communities throughout the U.S. in recent years, with activists determined to press further.
The public is starting to become more aware and less blindly trusting of authorities.
So is your goal to remove fluoride from public water sources nationwide?
Absolutely. Yes.
Leaving parents like Abby Udi Smith increasingly worried about the long-term impact of her tap water.
It definitely will mean more avid teeth brushing and just keeping up on dentist appointments.
Erin McLaughlin, NBC News, Union County, North Carolina.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
Community water fluoridation recently hit its 75th anniversary, touted as a significant advancement in public health. But new research suggests the potential for adverse health impacts. There's little question that supplemental fluoride strengthens teeth and reduces decay, but at what cost? Most of the older studies were snapshot-in-time studies looking only at group-level data or were based on higher than normal exposure. This has since changed with the publication of prospective studies following individual exposure levels from mother-child pairs over time. The first few were from Mexico and correlated higher fluoride levels in the urine of pregnant women with future developmental delay in their infants. They found worse cognitive performance at age 4 and lower IQ from ages 6 through 12. But the fluoride was from fluoridated salt or water sources where fluoride was present naturally. Then this study came out of Canada, the first prospective study using individual exposure data dealing directly with community water fluoridation receiving, quote-unquote, optimally fluoridated water. None of the municipal water fluoride levels exceeded 1.5 parts per million, and the vast majority, over 90%, were under the U.S. target of 0.7. Despite drinking optimally fluoridated water, the study of more than 500 mother-child pairs found that higher fluoride exposure during pregnancy once again appeared to translate into lower child intelligence measured at ages 3 to 4. The American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists recommends pregnant women drink at least 8 cups of water a day. Based on the Canadian study, following this advice with water at U.S. target fluoridation levels might result in as much as a 5-point loss in IQ. The Canadian study was published in the American Medical Journal Association's Pediatrics Journal, the longest-running pediatrics journal in the country. The editor-in-chief defended its decision to publish the study, quote, as testament to the fact that JAMA Pediatrics is committed to disseminating the best science regardless of how contentious the results may be," unquote. The Canadian Agency for Drugs and Technologies in Health issued a rapid response report concluding that there is insufficient evidence to conclusively conclude that fluoride exposure at optimum levels affects neurological development, but that's not what the Canadian study was saying. The researchers just suggested the possible need to reduce fluoride intake during pregnancy. As the accompanying editorial concluded, based on the new data, a dispassionate and tempered discussion of fluoride's potential neurotoxicity is warranted. What was the response from U.S. regulators? Within a month of the Canadian study's release, the National Toxicology Program, which is part of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services that evaluates substances for potentially harmful human health effects, released a draft evaluation of fluoride exposure and neurodevelopmental and cognitive health effects, and concluded that, quote, "Based on a systematic review of the evidence, the NTP concludes that fluoride is presumed to be a cognitive neurodevelopmental hazard to humans," unquote. So we've gone from dismissing people who question the safety of water fluoridation as zealots or anti-science fanatics to the official U.S. National Toxicology Program saying we should presume it's hazardous. Now, this was just a draft report. To ensure the integrity of its report, the NTP asked the National Academies, probably our most prestigious scientific institution, to review it. The review raised a bunch of concerns, which was portrayed in the dental literature as discrediting the IQ research, but that's not what the National Academy said. They explicitly said that their misgivings don't mean that the NTP conclusion that fluoride should be presumed to be neurotoxic is incorrect. They just wanted some further analysis. So in 2020, they redrafted their draft and once again came to the same conclusion, presuming it's a cognitive neurodevelopmental hazard based on the extent, consistency, and robustness of the IQ data. The National Academies then re-reviewed their redrafted draft, concluding it's much improved, but urged the NTP to further improve the clarity of the document, and we await the final NTP report. The National Toxicology Program is part of the Public Health Service, in partnership with the CDC, FDA, and NIH, dedicated to the analysis of agents of concern to identify any toxic effects. How did the medical community respond to the draft conclusions in a recent systematic review that concluded that fluoride is to be presumed to be a cognitive neurodevelopmental hazard to humans based on studies showing lower IQ scores among kids with higher fluoride exposure? What do you do when current research contradicts public practices, when new evidence doesn't conform with existing beliefs? Well, health authorities have continued to conclude that fluoride is unequivocally safe, despite the new studies in recent years linking fluoride exposure in pregnancy with adverse effects on fetal brain development. There are still papers on how to sell fluoridation of the water supply, targeting social media and the person-to-person spread of fluoride misinformation. Search engines are to be encouraged, at the very least, to flag search engine results that point to water fluoridation health misinformation suggesting adverse effects. In promoting support for community water fluoridation, maybe we don't even want to proclaim its safety for fear of raising questions about risks. I mean, if you're saying it's safe, then that begs the question, well, is it not safe? Maybe we shouldn't even talk about whether it's safe. The tendency to ignore new evidence that does not conform to widespread beliefs may be impeding our response to early warnings about fluoride as a potential developmental neurotoxin. But some are just so fixed in their views on fluoridation that they won't reassess their stance no matter what the latest research might show. Ironically, it was the anti-fluoridationists who were accused of their anti-scientific attitudes, but now it's the pro-fluoridationists. One of the most facile pro-fluoridation arguments I ran across is the suggestion that fluoride can't be hurting IQs, because over the last half-century of fluoridation, IQ scores have been going up rather than down. The jaw-dropping irony is that a substantial part of that rise may have been due to the removal of another neurotoxic element, lead. It's worth remembering that the science surrounding the neurodevelopmental hazard of low-level lead exposure was also bitterly contested, using the same kind of arguments we see today in the fluoridation debate. A few short years before leaded gas was effectively banned in the United States, a meta-analysis of lead exposure and child IQ only found 24 human studies, all cross-sectional, with a typical associated loss of intelligence of about 4 IQ points. The current data suggests a similar IQ loss from fluoride from an even stronger body of evidence. A spokesperson for the American Dental Association responded to the new data, pointing out that some cities that have ended water fluoridation saw an increase in cavities. Okay, but that's kind of a strange response to data suggesting the potential for permanent brain damage in children. I mean, I know they're the Dental Association, but how could they so easily ignore the serious red flags of potential neurotoxicity for cavity reduction? This is not to say tooth decay isn't a serious health issue, but there are ways to get the cavity-preventing benefits of fluoride without the risks. Since the primary benefits arise from topical contact with our enamel, but the primary risk arise from systemic absorption, we can follow Europe's example and safely reap the rewards using fluoride toothpaste and mouthwashes. In Europe, 98% of the population drink unfluoridated water. Several countries, including France, Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, banned fluoridation decades ago in favor of fluoride toothpaste. As more than 10 years ago, the official Scientific Committee on Health Risks of the European Union concluded that topical application of fluoride is most effective in preventing tooth decay, and there appears to be no obvious advantage in favor of fluoridating the water supply.